Pauline's Revenge. English summary story. Attenborough was 72 years old, but she looked much younger, especially in soft light. When the light hit her just right, she seemed as young as 30. She had a nice figure and face, and a good nose shape, but her big grey eyes made her seem older. Pauline had left her husband, Ronald, many years ago. They had 2 sons, Henry and Robert. Sadly, Henry passed away when Robert was just 10. Now, Robert was 32 and lived with his mother in London. He worked as a lawyer but didn't make a lot of money because his mother was rich. Pauline's niece, Sis, also lived with them. She had no money or home of her own, so she relied on her Aunt Pauline. Sis was a shy, big young woman with dark hair and eyes. She had feelings for her cousin Robert but never told him. Robert was also shy and lacked confidence. They all lived in a lovely house not far from London, surrounded by nice gardens. Every day, Robert went to work, and when he came home, they all had dinner together with candles on the table. Pauline loved how the soft candlelight made her look younger and beautiful. After dinner, they had coffee in the drawing room filled with beautiful furniture and pictures Pauline had collected and sold for a lot of money. Their conversations were simple and happy. Sis usually took the coffee tray away and sometimes sat in the garden or walked by the stream. She loved hearing Pauline and Robert being happy together. Sis had feelings for Robert and worried that Pauline wanted Robert to marry her when she died, but Robert was too shy. She felt time was slipping away. Sometimes, Sis stayed in the garden until late, watching Pauline's bedroom light go on. Robert would stay in the drawing room for a while before going to bed. Sis wanted to go to him but hesitated. Sis wanted to speak up and tell Robert everything felt wrong, but she couldn't. If she did, Aunt Pauline would overhear. So, she retreated to her own rooms. In the mornings, Robert went to work while Pauline stayed in bed until lunchtime. Sometimes, she didn't leave her room until tea time. Despite this, she always looked fresh and young. Pauline loved resting in the afternoons, basking in the warm sun in a smaller courtyard behind the stables. She had her own spot there with a chair, umbrella, and blankets for sunbathing. One day, Sis decided to join in. She climbed onto the flat roof of the stables, finding a sunny spot. While lying there, she overheard a strange voice speaking softly, causing fear and shock. The voice mentioned someone named Henry and a warning about a failed relationship. Sis looked around but found no one else on the roof. The voice continued, talking about not being able to do anything more and someone dying without knowing them again. The voice went silent, and Sis lay on her blanket on that beautiful summer afternoon. She wondered if it belonged to a ghost, but she disliked thoughts of ghosts, spirits, and magic. Then, she heard a deep sigh followed by the strange voice again. It mentioned someone's heart feeling pain but claimed it wasn't their fault and said it's better for a heart to feel pain than to break from sorrow. The voice then mentioned Robert marrying Sis but not caring about her. Sis sat up in surprise, realizing it was Aunt Pauline speaking. She figured Aunt Pauline must be below her and somehow making her voice sound strange to scare her. Despite being afraid, Sis started thinking more clearly. After some thought, Sis remembered the story of Henry, Robert's older brother, who had been in love with Claudia, an actress. However, their mother had opposed their relationship, leading to Henry falling ill and passing away at a young age. Aunt Pauline's voice continued, talking about living forever with sun, love, and good food. Sis realized she was hearing Aunt Pauline's thoughts, which scared her. Looking down, she saw a hole in the roof where a rainwater pipe was. Suddenly, a sigh and whisper came from that hole, saying it was enough sun for Pauline that day. Sis finally understood what was happening. Aunt Pauline was actually speaking her thoughts aloud without realizing her voice carried up to the roof through the rain pipe. She seemed guilty about Henry's death, feeling like it was her fault. Sis believed Pauline loved Henry more than Robert and only started caring for Robert after Henry's tragic death. Sis, feeling uncomfortable, put on her clothes, gathered her things, and carefully climbed down the ladder. As she descended, she heard her aunt call out, signaling the end of her sunbathing session. Sis then collected Pauline's belongings from the courtyard and, curious, found the rainpipe hidden behind some leaves. She realized that when Pauline sat in a certain spot, her voice would travel up the rainpipe to the roof, where Sis had heard her thoughts. Later that evening, after coffee, Pauline felt sleepy and went to bed, leaving Sis and Robert alone. Sis turned to Robert and asked if he remembered Henry, which surprised him. He replied that he remembered Henry very well and was asked to describe him by Sis. Suddenly, from the hole in the rainpipe, Sis heard her aunt's voice. Initially speaking in Italian, Pauline then switched to English. She mentioned Robert's resemblance to his father, Mauro, and expressed affectionate memories of him. This revelation shocked Sis, realizing that Ronald wasn't Robert's biological father, rather, an Italian man named Mauro. Pauline's tone shifted, expressing disappointment in Robert's demeanor compared to Mauro, whom she regarded as a passionate lover. She made comparisons between Robert and Sis, stating that Sis was more expressive in her feelings. Concerned by Pauline's words, Sis intervened, speaking through the rainpipe, urging Pauline not to harm Robert. She continued speaking, causing Pauline to react with surprise, questioning who was speaking. Sis, continuing the ruse, mentioned Henry, leading Pauline to believe it was Henry's spirit speaking, expressing concern for Robert's well-being. Pauline, distressed, felt haunted by Henry's spirit, feeling responsible for his past. This interaction between Sis and Pauline continued, with Sis trying to protect Robert and imply a spiritual presence. Sis, adopting a stern and intimidating tone, said, "I have come to punish you," through the rainpipe, conveying her anger towards Pauline. Despite her anger, Sis found the situation somewhat comical and amusing. As the afternoon progressed, the sky darkened with yellow and gray clouds, hinting at an impending storm. Thunder rumbled, signaling the approaching bad weather. Sis quickly dressed and, noticing Pauline's aversion to thunder, alerted her aunt and rushed indoors herself. The storm intensified, causing Pauline to skip tea, as she disliked thunderstorms. Robert, arriving home late, encountered pouring rain. Meanwhile, Sis prepared for dinner, adorning herself in a white dress with flowers pinned to her breast. Upon entering the drawing room, Robert, initially observing the rain, now wore a different expression while watching Sis. The room was softly illuminated by a table lamp until Sis abruptly switched on the bright ceiling light. At that moment, Pauline, dressed in black, entered the room, her face revealed clearly under the strong light. Pauline, despite wearing makeup, appeared older and filled with resentment, much to Sis and Robert's surprise. Robert, taken aback, commented on her appearance, expressing shock at her sudden aging. Pauline's mood soured further as she angrily inquired about dinner, exhibiting signs of frustration and aging rapidly before their eyes. Both Sis and Robert were visibly disturbed by their mother's demeanor. During dinner, Pauline ate quickly and abruptly excused herself to bed, leaving Robert and Sis in a state of concern. They stayed in the drawing room for the rest of the evening, quietly contemplating Pauline's sudden change in behavior and appearance. Pauline entered the room and, with hatred in her eyes, addressed Robert and Sis, urging them to get married quickly, citing their apparent love for each other. Robert calmly reminded his mother of her previous stance against cousins marrying, but Pauline retorted, revealing Robert's true paternity and disparaging him for not living up to his father's greatness. Pauline's mental state deteriorated rapidly over a week despite the doctor's attempts to help. She refused medication and exhibited hateful behavior, isolating herself from Robert and Sis. At first, Sis felt remorseful for the consequences of her actions, but she then realized Pauline's true nature and the harm she had caused. As Pauline withdrew into seclusion, Robert and Sis spent time together, yet Sis couldn't bring herself to confess her role in Pauline's breakdown. During a conversation, Robert revealed his mother's self-centered nature and thirst for power, which ultimately led to the destruction of their family. Shortly after, Pauline passed away. In her will, she left Robert a modest sum and Sis an even smaller amount, with the majority of her wealth bequeathed to a museum bearing her name, a final act of revenge on her son and niece.